it going?
I think it's stuck.
No, keep going.
I don't want it.
Okay, you gonna give me a thumbs up? Awesome. Pump it down. Pump it. You got it. See if you can lift that truck. Heavy, huh?
Yeah. The truck's heavy.
You got it. See what you got. That's it? You're done?
Yeah.
Is it off the ground? How's it going, guys? It's Jay here from Grade 2 Cops. Just shooting a quick video here. I'm just doing the brakes in the driveway of all things. You know, gotta make some money on the side. It's my father-in-law's truck, and I don't know if he wants to save some money or help me out, or maybe I'm the only guy that he trusts. But anyways, I'm doing his brakes. I'm in the driveway, and he's an engineer, which brings me to a good point. Here's something that's overlooked quite a bit when people are doing their brake jobs, especially if you're trying to save some money and do it from some shady, you know, in the driveway kind of guy, or do it yourself. What you end up getting on these things, especially when this is a Dodge Ram, by the way, it's a 2016 Dodge Ram. This is the rear axle on that. You can see the parking brake assembly, which has nothing to do with your regular driving. That's only for when you're parked. And you got a brake rotor that goes on here, rotor, and it's pretty big. I'd go get it, but it's off in a box somewhere. It's a pretty big rotor. Anyways, the key thing that people overlook here is there's specifications for everything, right? In anything in life, you know, a bolt needs to be tightened to a certain spec, and there's certain tolerances for things. And in the brake world, when you have a brake rotor, your rotor is spinning, you know, parallel to the sort of perpendicular. Anyways, it's spinning, and as it moves, it's going to have a little bit of variance back and forth, and the specification on that, it's pretty tight. And when you got a big rotor, you know, if you have a big rotor, so you're looking at here, the bigger the rotor comes out, the more you have an issue here, the more it gets amplified out here. Okay, so the thing that people don't understand, and I'm going to put some pictures in this video, but when you take that rotor off and you got a lot of rust on the surface, you may kind of clean it and you think it's good, and you slap that new rotor on there and it looks all nice and shiny and fresh, but the reality is that it's not really clean. And specifically on these guys, now I'm a European specialist, but I've done my time in the trenches on domestics who like to use studs, right? Which makes it a little bit harder to clean these surfaces in here. And a lot of guys, they won't even clean it at all. They'll just pop the rotor off, stick a new one on there, maybe put a little bit of lube in there. That's great. But the key thing is the rust. And let me put a shadow here. I'm going to get my head in the way there. Right there is what I'm trying to do. If you see here, right there is the spot that I'm looking at. Okay, a lot of guys don't clean in there, and that's a problem, because what happens is, it's not so much if you didn't clean each one and they were all exactly even, you wouldn't really have too much of a problem, but they're never going to be an exact. And when you machine a rotor, which nobody does anymore, but when guys were machining rotors back in the day, which I was, we'd like to claim 1 thou tolerance. And I know it's a metric world these days, and I am a metric guy, but that's the term that I used to remember, is 1 thou tolerance. And we're talking less than the thickness of a piece of paper, and I hate throwing that cliche around all the time, but less than the thickness of a piece of paper, that's all it takes here. And what happens is you'll have a variance where you have a little high spot here, and then you don't have those high spots here, and that throws the rotor out just a touch. And it's not a problem right now, and it's not a problem tomorrow, but what happens is over time, when that rotor heat sinks, you know, you're braking and it's cooling, it's heating, it's cooling, it's heating, it's cooling. Over time, that rotor on that high spot then starts to bow out slightly. And when everything's working fine at the beginning, the calipers, they're designed to take up some of that slack, and it won't transmit back to the pedal. But what happens is over time, that part of the rotor will get hotter than the rest, you know, and it'll start to deform even more. And then you get to a point where the mechanical components of your braking system can no longer keep up with that, and you start to get that pulsation. And I see this a lot. You know, in aftermarket, you go to the dealer. Well, let's say you don't go to the dealer. You buy the thing brand new, and let's say you go 100,000 kilometers on your first set of brakes, right? And you're like, hey, that's great. This vehicle is awesome. You know, I can go long time, no brakes. And then you get the next set, and it could come from a reputable place, could even come from the dealer, or it could come from some guy like me doing it in the driveway, and it only goes 50,000 kilometers, and there's lots of pads left, but the rotors suck. The pulsation is just terrible. You're hitting the brakes, you know, you're coming off the highway, you're hitting the brakes, and the thing is it's just shaking like crazy, right? And that's pretty much, that's from that. There could be other reasons why it does it, but guaranteed it's because someone didn't take the time with, like, a guy like this and scraping, you know, meticulously scraping. Oh my god, this is gonna take me forever. But unless you're meticulous about it and get this surface totally clean, and I'm not saying you got to eat off of it, but I mean, you got to go around with your finger. Like, watch here, you probably can see this. I can see a high spot right here. You can see stuff scraping off. Now I just went around with a grinder right here. I just went around with this guy, right, and took all the high stuff off, and I can still go around with this scraper and scrape paper thin pieces of rust off of there, especially right on the edge. It's right on the edge, like you just saw me take off there. That's terrible. That was probably about 4 or 5 thou worth of material there. Right there alone would take the rotor out of specification right off the bat. If I was to take a runout gauge, with nobody uses anymore. Nobody uses. I mean, I worked for some high-end companies. I work for a company right now that we take things pretty seriously, and it's not very often that you get out a runout gauge. We did, because we had a problem about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. We actually got them out, got the runout gauge, mounted it here or wherever it was, and measured the actual, I guess that would be radial runout, back and forth on the rotor, you know, measured out, and it was like something like 1.5 thou, 2 thou, something like that, to verify that the rotors were actually doing their thing properly. But nobody does that, and the tolerance, be surprised, it's pretty thin. It's very small. It's like, usually the spec is like 1 or 2 thou at the most. So that stuff I just shaved off right there. Let's see if I can find another. Yeah, right here. There's another one right there. Take that off, and then bug just jumped on the camera. Look at that. I just got photobombed by an insect. That's awesome. But anyways, that tiny little piece right there that you just saw me take off, that was probably, again, 3 or 4 thou, right there, just me taking that off, that would have put the rotor out of spec. And it's not like I'm going to put a brand new rotor on here and then get out a runout gauge and start checking to make sure that it's in spec. No, I'm just going to put the thing on, I'm going to go for a drive. It's going to feel great because it's brand new, and everything's going to be, I just cleaned up everything, so everything's going to be moving around, and it's going to absorb all of that intolerance, and I'm not going to feel it at the brake pedal. I'm going to be like, this is great. And then about a month later, when I head up to the cottage and I sit down for dinner with my father-in-law, and he's like, hey, those brakes you just put on, they're shit. And I'm going to be like, oh, well, you did them in the driveway, so I guess that's what you get, right? That's how it's going to be. But I'm not like that. I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to go around, and I'm going to clean this all off nice and good, and then I'm going to put that rotor on there, and I'm going to make sure I get lube, you know, all around here. Especially you want to put some lube right on the leading edge of the hub, because that's going to keep the rust from here migrating over to this face, and same thing here, you want to put some lube. Anyways, there it is in a nutshell. You know, here's your brake rotor, there's your caliper, there's your caliper bracket. This whole thing is designed to move back and forth. This thing here is not really meant to go back and forth, right? But it will if you don't clean the surface. It's going to move a little bit, and I'm talking minor is going to cause an issue here. So yeah, anyways, there's a lot of stuff that goes into doing a brake job that a lot of people don't know. I've spent over 20 years in the trade learning from, those are the rednecks going by on their quads. You know, I've spent 20 years in the trade, and I've been fortunate to learn from a lot of really good guys, and you learn these little tricks. Right now, there's a lot that goes into doing a brake job. I'm not going to go into it. I just wanted to go into that because there's a lot of people out there, top guys. There's a lot of guys out there that don't pay attention to it, that don't do it because it doesn't show itself. It doesn't show itself right away. It shows itself down the road, and then it's easy for a guy, a veteran. It's easy for a veteran guy to just go, shitty parts, Chinese parts. You know, blame it on China. It's awesome. I'm not saying that there isn't garbage parts out there, but you got to pay attention to that. And even when you pop that rotor off, your mindset's not caring about that. You know, you're frustrated because you're doing a warranty job now, and you're slamming the next one on, and a month later, 2 months later, that comes back, and then all of a sudden it's the client's problem. It's the customer's fault. You're like, man, that guy just complains. That customer just complains, and guess what? That client goes somewhere else now. Now you got a bad rap. You don't have that client anymore. The money's not in your pocket. So, anyways, hope it helps out with some guys in the driveway and not. But that's my spiel for the day, doing the brakes, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.